Okay, Jackie, we haven't rehearsed this particularly. It's all about the disconnect, as I call it, and as I see it, not necessarily presuming you will, between learning, enhanced performance, reward, not necessarily monetary, what people get back for participating actively in learning. And my view, at least, that there isn't enough of that. There isn't enough connection between putting the effort in to learn and getting something back.
Yeah. And I suppose we need to look at whose responsibility that is. And I think we've got two elements here, and we at play. We've got the organization, which have a part to play in having a culture of learning and sharing the purpose with, because I think if we know what the purpose is, it's easier for us to learn as individuals. And then I think there's the individual, and the individual needs to take responsibility for their own learning and development and growth plans. And if both of those align, you have the perfect world, you know, the utopian learning environment, which we know really exists. But that's, I think, where, you know, there's going to be a disconnect until those two things align.
Okay. Two's enough. I'm glad you only came up with two. Two's already too many for me, because
start with two.
Yeah, I think this is the most serious thing, apart from my health, in my world. Right? I've been in learning development. This is my 42nd year, or 42nd full year. I've just begun, and I think this is the biggest thing of all, because we folks in our learning world go around earnestly doing stuff, preparing stuff, delivering stuff, hoping it has some impact. And I think for me, fundamentally, I've only come in the last couple of years to realize, I'm on a 45-year apprenticeship here. I've only come to realize that the reason that people don't knock this door of mine down saying, Andrew, help me to help myself, because I'm a learner that takes responsibility for myself in an organization that's nurturing, and I want to progress my career. They don't do that because they don't see that connection. They don't see the connection between learning and getting better at what they do, being recognized for it. And as first speech, there'll be others.
Yeah. And so I'm going to say that shouldn't matter. If you are a learner, a lifelong learner, then you'll find a way. And of course, if you're working for an organization, you want them to support there will be mandatory courses, programs, training, learning you have to go on. And you would hope that they would also see the benefit in that. Yeah, and they would have a process that supports that. So I go back again to, there's these two elements, isn't there? And I think you can't ask the one without the other. And is it chicken and egg? Which comes first? I mean,
yeah, no. Well, it's interesting, because I guess I used to think like you did. I used to have more optimism about this, and I'm still a positive person. But I don't see this enough, Jackie. And I know this is the world we're describing we wished existed. I know we're talking about organizations that should nurture people, should not just run training courses, but should genuinely try to create an infrastructure and a system by which people can learn individually. And I know we want to live in a world where individuals take responsibility for their learning, but I don't see very much of that. I see a load of people, when asked to read something before coming on, haven't got time, watch a video, I didn't get it. I'm starting to realize that humans are flawed, and there aren't very many people, it would appear, unless I've been in the wrong circles, who actually are described the way you describe them, as lifelong learners. People say they are, and then you say, what do you do? Well, I read a bit, and I watch videos, and I do a bit of YouTube. But people say their things, but sometimes the substance doesn't back it up.
Yeah, and I suppose, well, for me, it's always the pragmatic aspect of it is, what are we doing with that? So you can read, you can watch, but fundamentally, it's how are you applying that in whatever environment that, and I think that's where organizations need to get better, is connecting that. Yeah,
I agree.
We are doing this. Or we're sending you on this program, or we're asking you to learn this thing because this is how it'll benefit. This is how it'll benefit you, and this is how it'll benefit us let's not let's not BS ourselves. There's always going to be, and we're always asking that question, what's in it for me? So
but you use the sending word. Use the sending word. I mean, sending to me implies more organizational value than individual. And I think that part of the problem is organizations have always since 1982, and they still do it now, whatever they pretend otherwise. Organizations do what's simple, straightforward, and what they've always done: send people on things. What they don't do is say, Jacky Leonard, how are you a unique and special individual here? What can we do that's different to everyone else to help you? That's too difficult. They haven't got the skills, the knowledge, the will, the history to do those things.
But surely that starts at recruitment, doesn't it? That, and I know a lot of organizations will say that they recruit for attitude, and then train for skills wherever that's possible. So that needs to start at recruitment.
I agree.
And your induction process, your probationary period needs to be fit for purpose. And that's where those conversations start.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is what you bring to the party, and this is what we want, we have.
Yep.
Where's the gaps here, and how do we help? How do we help fill those, and support you to fill those for your own growth and development, so that it benefits us too. That's the conversation starter then and there, and continuing that conversation then throughout the lifespan, the work lifespan of that individual.
No, I mean, I absolutely go with that. The people you get into an organization become the way the organization itself culturally becomes and is described. And I think you're right. I don't see a lot of concern. I don't see a lot of, I'm not negative, I'm critical. I don't see a lot of concern. I don't see a lot of deliberate interest in bringing people into the organization who are self-starting individuals who take responsibility for their learning. Hear the words, don't see the actions enough. They're out there. If you can find them and get them in front of you, because you're fishing in a pool, you might have missed them at that early stage because your adverts might have been rubbish or your reputation's bad. But if you've got somebody sat in front of you who is genuinely described as we would like them to be, grab them, because you don't have to spend a lot of money on them. They'll be doing all this themselves.
Yeah. And then and that's, once you've got them, as you said, it's then providing opportunities, isn't it, for them to grow. And working with them on what those opportunities are, because one of my bugbears is that we tend to do things in the same way. So how do people want to learn? How do people want to receive this information? And once we know that, then actually we can better apply that.
If you've got, I've seen the cheesy stuff from people like Steve Jobs and various other people. If you employ the right people, you don't have to over manage them. You can leave them to themselves. Oh, that's very true. The trouble is, it's also an act of faith. I think organizations, as a rule and as a generality, prefer to manage people than be managed by them. And if you've got too many people saying, leave me alone, I know my own needs, give me a bit of space, give me some time, and I think, oh, that's a bit different. I want you to go on this course. That course doesn't interest me. It doesn't meet my needs. Even if you look at my PDP, which I used to use a complete waste of time, you'll see it doesn't feature on there. But we felt that putting you on this course and spending all this money on you would meet your needs. Well, it doesn't, because these are my needs. And I can meet my needs by spending half a day with Jacky Leonard in Wales, because she knows all about this stuff. And I'll get a lot more from that than going on this expensive 2-day course in London that cost you 1,000, 1,500 quid. I don't think that mindset is there often enough.
No, but that's what you're describing there is a dialogue, which I don't necessarily, as you say, doesn't often exist, does it? And if you,
in my experience,
if you have that conversation, that flow of communication, that dialogue, and you're not trying to lump everybody in the same, it's difficult, isn't it? The bigger the organization, the more complicated it becomes, I think. But what tends to happen, and probably, I'd like to think for all the best reasons, are that you see there's a gap for a role rather than a gap for an individual.
Yeah, true.
Therefore, then that gap, that the organizations will try and fill that gap with a program, with a course, which will they believe will satisfy the many, rather than really develop the individual.
And the tragedy is, Jackie, these good people we talked about at recruitment that say, hey, you know, I like your words, I like what you're saying to me. And then they get into the organization and say, whoa, no, it's just like every other organization I've ever known. They want me to go on training courses. They're not really interested in me. They're not living up to the expectation I had of them. And they go. And you get left with a load of people who are kind of what you're looking for, but they aren't what you say you want. The good people that could be the people you most want say, look around and say, nah, this isn't what they said it would be. I'm off. And they go somewhere else.
Well, that's the importance of, you know, walking your talk, isn't it? And delivering, you know, on your, you know, delivering. We go back to customer expectations, and our first customer is me, and then my next customer is my staff, my team. Yeah, and if I'm not delivering to their expectations, I got no chance of satisfying the end user or the client. So that, you know, it all should be aligned. So it all comes together.
There's a logic in this, and all right. When I rant like this, and this is a rant, isn't it? When I kind of know I'm not going to change anything. I kind of know after 42 years, in 42 years' time, although I won't be here to see it, it's likely to still be happening the same way, which is quite a shocker. But I also know this is not easy. And I have a degree of empathy for organizations on this, because shifting from what they usually know intuitively doesn't work as well as they believe it does, sending people on courses and then seeing the world not change massively, shifting towards any sort of learner focus, individual focus, 70, 20, 10, yes, please, let's just see evidence of it somewhere. That is not easy. And it could initially be costly to build a new infrastructure, to do things in a different way. And it's a punt, it's a risk for those people who previously were in a nice, safe place where no one gave them grief for doing things the way they've done it for the last 30 years. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
There you are.
I agree, and
it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
And I think it's probably a longer conversation than we've got time for today. But I think for me that the key here is purpose. Yeah, if we want to connect, we have to have a common purpose.
True.
And a common direction, and we have to communicate more about how best to get there. To satisfy both parties' needs, yeah. Identify the benefits for all, because that's the only way that we'll continue towards, you know, that common goal.
All right, I'm starting already to think about summarizing now. You used the word alignment a few times. We've talked about the alignment of purpose of organization and of needs and aspirations of individual. There's usually a gap there. I'm thinking about creativity and innovation in learning development, not just churning out, there's your chair, go and sit on it, just like you would have done 30 years ago. That's an aspiration. That's an aspiration. I don't think that's going to change in my working life. I think I'm going to go into most organizations, if they'd ever have me through the door, look in so-called training rooms and see lines of chairs and think, oh yeah, just like in 1982. How much of that can change and at what rate? And really, if organizations feel it's in it for them to do that, let's be realistic. Just because we're sitting here, or you're sitting there and I'm sitting here, not here, by the way, that's a static thing. Just because we think this is the case, organizations wouldn't necessarily agree. They might say, hey, you know, the hell with that. It's a lovely idea, but it works this way. I just genuinely, intuitively believe that the people we describe as being those rare ones that take responsibility for their own learning and development expect more from their employer organization than being told to sit on a chair and be on a training course.
Yeah, and people learn very differently from the way they did. You know, there are more opportunities now to access information.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be cleverer with that.
Okay, I'm going to shut it down there because, as you say, it's a theme with many other parts we can return to. So if anyone's stuck with this to the end, well done. Prize for you. So thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.